When the feed froze, I thought it was a glitch, Ethan said, staring at the monitor. 7 minutes of static. Then the picture returned. Grace and the twins lay motionless on the floor, and a shadow moved behind them. His pulse slammed through his chest as he sprinted down the hallway, every camera flashing across his screens replaying those same 7 minutes that changed everything. Months earlier, his wife, Lauren, had given birth to the twins and vanished into someone he didn't recognize. She'd once filled every room with warmth, her laughter echoing through their lakeside home in Connecticut. But motherhood stripped her joy bare. While the babies cried, Lauren's eyes stayed on her phone, her face lit by the glow of bank alerts. "You take them," she'd say, her tone more command than plea. At first, Ethan blamed exhaustion. She just needed rest, he told himself. But soon she stopped pretending. No affection, no interest, not even anger. Just absence. 6 months later, she emptied their accounts and disappeared. No note. No goodbye. Just 2 infants and a silence so sharp it hurt to breathe. When Ethan came home and found them safe but alone, he said nothing. He only whispered to the still air, "It's us now." And in that moment, something in him closed forever. He fired the staff within a week. The mansion became a bunker. New locks, reinforced doors, motion sensors, cameras in every corridor. He told himself it was for the twins' safety, but deep down, it was his own armor. He stopped answering calls, stopped visiting friends. His world shrank to 2 crying babies and a wall of screens. Nannies came and went like ghosts. One quit after 10 days. Another sobbed through her notice. The third ran out mid-afternoon after he yelled that her singing was too loud for their nerves. After that, no agency would send anyone, until Grace. She arrived one foggy morning, her hands steady, her eyes clear. "I've cared for newborns before," she said softly. "I can stay as long as needed." Ethan studied her. Plain dress, no phone in sight, no arrogance. "No distractions," he said. "No visitors. Cameras are everywhere." "I understand," she replied. "I'm here for them." Something about her steadiness unsettled him. Within days, the twins laughed again, their giggles echoing down the hall. Grace filled the house with quiet humming and gentle order. The air shifted, lighter, almost kind. Ethan watched from the monitors, telling himself it was good for the children, yet every moment she smiled made him strangely uneasy, like the walls were softening against his will. And then came the night the feed went dark. 7 minutes of static. When it returned, Grace was on the floor beside the twins. A blur moved in the background, a human shape, deliberate and familiar. Ethan's heart dropped as he replayed the footage frame by frame. That face, those eyes, he hadn't seen in over a year. Lauren, the woman who had abandoned them, had come back, not through the front door, but through the shadows. By the time the police arrived, the truth unraveled faster than Ethan could breathe. Lauren hadn't run away for freedom. She'd been running from debts, from people who now wanted what she'd stolen. And when she learned Ethan had rebuilt his fortune without her, she came back not for love or forgiveness, but for the children, her last leverage. In the chaos of her return, guilt and rage collided inside Ethan. Grace, trembling but unbroken, had thrown herself between the twins and the woman who once called herself their mother. That night, after the sirens faded and the cuffs clicked shut, Ethan stood in the nursery again, the same place where he'd once promised, "It's us now." Only this time, he wasn't alone. Grace sat nearby, holding the babies close, her eyes full of quiet strength. He looked at her and finally understood. Protecting his family wasn't about walls or cameras. It was about trust, something he thought he'd lost forever. When the dawn came through the curtains, Ethan shut off the monitors for the first time in 2 years. The house was silent again, but this time, it didn't feel empty. She's hiding something, Ethan thought. No one's that patient. The twins seemed to know it too. Whenever he lifted them, they screamed until their tiny lungs gave out. But when Grace held them, the crying stopped instantly. Sometimes, they reached for her even while he stood there, arms outstretched, their small hands choosing her over him. That hurt in a place he didn't like to admit existed anymore. He started watching her more closely. He'd move things an inch to the left, leave a toy somewhere new, ask the same question twice just to see if her story changed. But Grace never slipped. "Everything's fine, sir," she'd answer softly, her calm steady enough to make him doubt his own instincts. Still, the house felt wrong. Too quiet. Too obedient. Every night, Ethan sat in his study surrounded by screens showing every inch of his home. The glow of the monitors painted his face pale as he stared at those tiny boxes, hallways, kitchen, nursery. And every night, Grace appeared in one of them, sitting beside the crib, her head bowed, sometimes dozing but never leaving the twins' side. He didn't like that. "She doesn't trust me either," he muttered once, half to himself, half to the flickering screens. Then the small, strange things started happening. Motion sensors tripped at odd hours, twice just after midnight. Grace said she must have walked in to check the babies. "They move a lot in their sleep," she explained, her tone even, her hands steady. He wanted to believe her, but something in her stillness made his nerves hum. One night, everything cracked. It was just after 3 a.m. when his phone jolted him awake in the hotel bed. A red warning flashed across the screen. "Alert, camera offline, nursery." Ethan blinked, dazed, confused. His system didn't fail. Not ever. He sat up fast, tapping the screen. The feed refused to reconnect. 1 minute. 2. His chest started to tighten. He tried the house line. No answer. He tried Grace's number. Nothing. For minutes. 5. 6. Then, finally, the connection returned. The nursery looked calm again. The twins asleep. Grace nowhere in sight. He should have felt relief, but his pulse only pounded harder. His system had dual redundancy, 2 separate power sources. A blackout wasn't possible. He leaned closer to the screen. That's when it glitched again. The feed froze. Blinked twice. Came back. Ethan's blood ran cold. Grace and the twins were no longer in the crib. They were on the floor. Grace's body was slumped sideways, her face pale, her hair matted. The twins lay tangled beside her, their small chests rising shallowly, soft ropes visible near their shoulders. The room looked untouched, except for them. He couldn't breathe. Then the image flickered again, movement near the doorway. A dark silhouette stepped halfway into view, tall and deliberate. Someone else was inside his house. Ethan lunged for his phone, shouting into it, "Security! Patch me through to the house now." Nothing. The app wouldn't respond. The intercom was dead. The feed went black again. By the time he was out of bed, his heart was hammering so hard it drowned out thought. He grabbed his car keys with trembling hands, whispering, "Hold on, Grace. Just hold on." The hotel hallway blurred around him. Twice, the key fob slipped from his shaking fingers before the car door unlocked. The drive back was a fever dream of red lights and dark highways. He didn't remember steering, didn't remember toll booths or the sound of the rain streaking across the windshield. Only the frozen image burned behind his eyes. Grace on the floor, the twins motionless beside her. Every mile felt like punishment. When he reached the mansion, the iron gates were half open. He hadn't left them that way. The security light above the driveway flickered weakly, buzzing like something had cut the current. He didn't bother parking. He jumped out, his shoes slapping the pavement, and ran. The front door was slightly ajar. "Grace," he shouted. His voice echoed through the marble foyer. No reply. Only the faint beeping from the alarm panel. Multiple alerts flashing red. He sprinted down the hall, heart pounding in his ears. The lights flickered again, one by one. When he reached the nursery, he stopped dead. The door was open just an inch. A thin line of light spilled across the floor. He could hear something, a soft creak, a breath, maybe a whisper. His hand hovered over the doorknob, frozen midair. The cameras hadn't prepared him for this part. The sound of his own children breathing on the other side of a door that might no longer be safe. And then, from inside the room, a voice he hadn't heard in over a year whispered his name. "Ethan." The nursery door was wide open. Ethan froze in the doorway. Grace lay on the floor exactly as he'd seen in the feed, her wrists loosely tied with a thin cord, hair tangled, breath trembling. The twins were pressed against her chest, crying softly but alive. "Grace," he breathed, rushing to her side. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of his voice. "Mr. Hale," she whispered weakly. He dropped to his knees and grabbed a letter opener from the desk, sawing through the cords. "Who did this? What happened?" Grace winced as she tried to sit up. "Someone broke in, a man. He was already inside when I went to check the noise. I tried to lock the door, but he—" She caught her breath, clutching her shoulder. "He shoved me, took something from the drawer, and ran." Ethan's voice sharpened. What did he take? She looked toward the study. Your safe keys. A pulse of dread went through him. He sprinted to his office. The safe stood wide open, its door bent slightly where it had been forced. Papers, documents, and boxes lay scattered across the carpet. The stacks of cash he kept for emergencies, gone. But one thing twisted the knife deeper. The small silver pendant Lauren used to wear, the one he'd locked away years ago, was missing too. He stood there staring at the empty space inside the safe, his reflection warped in the cold metal. His chest rose and fell in sharp, shallow bursts. Then came the sound of distant sirens, getting closer. Minutes later, officers flooded the mansion. Flashing red and blue lights poured through the front windows as they dusted for prints and photographed the damaged wiring near the security panel. Looks like a professional job, one of them said. Whoever did this knew your system, sir. Ethan didn't answer. He sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, eyes vacant. Grace sat beside him, cradling the twins close. One hiccuped quietly, the other clung to her sleeve. Why would he hurt you? Ethan finally asked. Grace shook her head. He didn't mean to. He was panicking. I think he came through the kitchen window. When I screamed, he pushed me down and tied me up. He said if I moved or called for help, he'd hurt the babies. Her voice cracked. Ethan's jaw tightened. Did you see his face? She hesitated, glancing at the officers, then back at Ethan. Yes, and I think he knew where everything was. One of the officers looked up sharply. Inside knowledge. Grace swallowed hard. He mentioned a name. Lauren. The air in the room changed instantly. Ethan's head lifted slowly, his eyes narrowing. What did he say about her? Grace's voice was barely a whisper. He said she sent him, that he came for what's hers. For a long moment, Ethan didn't move. He could feel his pulse in his throat, every word like a blade. Lauren, gone for years, the woman who'd walked out on her children, still reaching into his life from the shadows. He walked to the nursery window. The latch hung broken, the curtains swaying in the cool night air. She left them, he said under his breath. And now she sends thieves into my home. Grace's voice came softly behind him. He didn't come for the twins, sir. He never even looked at them. He just wanted the safe. When the officers finished, they promised extra patrols and fingerprint analysis. The mansion, though buzzing with voices and flashing lights, felt emptier than ever. Ethan couldn't rest. He rechecked every door, every wire, every lock, every inch of his system. His paranoia hadn't been madness, it had been survival. By dawn, the chaos had quieted. Grace sat on the couch, the twins bundled in her arms, their tiny breaths steady now. Ethan walked toward her, exhaustion in every line of his face. You saved them, he said quietly. Grace shook her head. I just did what any mother would do. The word mother lingered like a prayer. Ethan looked at the twins, his twins, and for the first time, he didn't see reminders of betrayal. He saw life. Fragile, pure, and almost lost. He knelt beside them, brushing a strand of hair from their foreheads. They reached for his hand, small fingers curling around his thumb. Grace smiled faintly. They know you now. Ethan's eyes glistened. He didn't speak. The first light of morning poured through the windows, casting soft gold over Grace and the twins. The house felt different, alive again, but human, imperfect, real. He stood there for a long time, breathing in the silence. Then he whispered, no more cameras. Grace looked up, confused. From now on, he said quietly, I'll watch them myself. For the first time since Lauren had walked out, Ethan turned off every monitor. The glow faded from the walls, replaced by the faint hum of a home reclaiming its peace. Grace carried one twin to the nursery, humming softly. The other slept soundly in her arms. And as Ethan watched her disappear down the hallway, he realized the quiet no longer frightened him. It felt like forgiveness. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, touching the same floors that had once felt like frozen stone. Ethan stood quietly in the doorway, watching Grace rock the twins in her arms. You should get some rest, he said softly. I will, sir, she whispered back. After they do. He almost smiled. They. That word had weight now. It meant something more than survival. It meant family. But peace didn't last long. The investigation pressed on. 2 detectives stayed after the patrol cars pulled away, combing through system logs and hours of surveillance. Near the old gate camera, one Ethan had forgotten to replace, they caught a glimpse of something. A blurred face. A flash of movement. "Do you recognize him?" one officer asked, freezing the frame. Ethan leaned closer. The picture was grainy, the man's features indistinct, but the gray windbreaker tugged at a buried memory. It was one Lauren used to wear on stormy days. His chest tightened, but his voice stayed even. "No," he said quietly. "I don't." Grace, seated on the couch with the twins, looked up. "Sir." He shook his head. "Nothing. Keep feeding them." That day bled into night. Ethan didn't sleep. He followed the detectives from room to room as they mapped the intruder's path. Whoever had entered the mansion had known exactly where to strike. The east side wiring had been sliced clean, the secondary router dismantled with precision. Only someone familiar with the property could have done it. By the next morning, the call came. A burnout car had been found near the edge of the city. Inside, investigators recovered scattered documents with Ethan's initials, along with a wallet. The ID read Ryan Trent, a name flagged for fraud, gambling debts, and cyber intrusion. But that wasn't all. Near the wreck, a damaged phone contained a string of text messages between Ryan and Lauren Hale. 3 days later, they had her. When Ethan saw her name printed in the police report, his stomach turned. Lauren, the woman who once made this house a home, was now a suspect in her own family's nightmare. During interrogation, she broke quickly. The recording showed a hollowed-out woman, her hair brittle, her hands shaking. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she told detectives. "The money I took years ago, it's gone. I gambled it all. I kept thinking I could win it back. I was stupid." When she met Ryan Trent, she thought he was her way out. He promised quick money, new beginnings, a chance to disappear her past. But when her luck dried up, he turned on her. "He had pictures," she said, her voice trembling. "Proof I left the kids. He said he'd ruin me unless I helped him." So she told him everything. The mansion's layout, the security blind spots, even how to delay the system reboot by cutting the auxiliary router first. She warned him not to hurt anyone. "Just take the cash and go," she'd begged. But Ryan wanted more. He jammed the Wi-Fi signal for exactly 7 minutes. Just long enough to open the safe. He used the side entrance near the generator room, the one blind spot Lauren remembered from renovation plans. But when Grace went to check the noise, he panicked, tied her up, and fled through the garden just before the system rebooted. Police traced him on nearby gas station cameras that same night. Hours later, he crossed the state line with fake papers, his trail fading beyond reach. But the car, the messages, and Lauren's confession were enough. When Ethan saw her during questioning, she barely looked human. Her skin pale, her voice cracked. Through the glass, she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just wanted to survive." Ethan stared for a long moment, the weight of years pressing into the silence. "You had everything," he said softly. "A family, a home, me, and you threw it away for strangers and greed." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know." He turned before she could say more. Outside, Grace was waiting beside the car, the twins bundled against the morning chill. When Ethan approached, their small arms reached toward him instinctively. Grace smiled faintly. "They're starting to know your voice." He knelt, brushing their hair from their faces. "They've heard enough shouting," he murmured. "Maybe it's time they heard something else." One of the twins giggled softly when he lifted them into his arms. No crying, no fear, just warmth. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the weight inside his chest begin to loosen. By the time they reached home, the sun had dipped low behind the mansion, casting amber light through the windows. The air felt lighter, almost forgiving. Grace settled the twins into their crib while Ethan stood at the window, watching the sky fade from gold to blue. "Grace," he said quietly, "you saved my children. You saved this home." She shook her head gently. "No, sir. I only gave them what their mother couldn't." He looked at her, eyes softening. "And what's that?" "Peace." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Stay," he said finally, his voice calm but certain. "Not as help, as their guardian." Grace blinked, her lips parting in disbelief before a smile broke through her exhaustion. "I will." Outside, the world was waking again. Birds in the garden, the hum of wind in the trees. Inside, the mansion, once cold, silent, and haunted, finally felt alive. Ethan stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Grace hum softly to the twins. The word family no longer felt like a memory. It was right there in front of him, Fragile, imperfect, but real. Would you forgive the one who broke your home, or thank the one who rebuilt it? Stay tuned to see how Ethan's second chance at trust changes everything. Don't forget to like, comment, and share where you're watching from.